The EduTech guys present a conversation from our live coverage of FETC in Orlando, Florida from Thursday, January 25th, 2018. Enjoy the program.
Cool. Hey, I'm Christine Jones with Benetech, a nonprofit company in Palo Alto, California that empowers communities with technology.
Awesome. So what brings you to FETC?
So we're excited to be here. This is our first time at this conference as exhibitors, and we're excited to be able to connect with teachers to tell them about some important technology solutions for their students. We primarily offer a service called Bookshare, which is a ebook library for kids who read differently because of a condition, maybe dyslexia or other learning disabilities or physical challenges that limit their ability to read in the typical way, or a visual impairment, for example. And so these students can access ebooks from our site and read in ways that work for them. And even better, Bookshare is free because it's funded by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs for all students with a qualifying condition. And so we're here just wanting to make sure teachers know about it, can come by the booth, take a look, see what how Bookshare can really empower their students.
I'm gonna surprise you here. My district uses it.
Great.
And
that's
we love
not
it.
a surprise.
That's not right. It's awesome.
Great.
And I actually get the opportunity a lot. The teachers will write me and say, "Hey, I have this student. Can you add these textbooks or these books to it?"
Excellent.
It's so easy to use. We use it on iPads.
Awesome.
And the kids can pull it up, and the kids love it.
Great.
I find it a very, very, very useful service.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, there are a variety of iPad apps that read the Bookshare books, and a couple of them are free, and there's one or two that are paid apps. So the beauty is the students can really customize their reading experience. They can pick the app that works best for them, the voice that works best for them. They can pick color schemes and the font size, oftentimes the font type, the speed of the speech. I mean, everything they can customize. How much white space is on the page. They can really make it work for them. So we don't have to make them work so hard to conform to reading the way people typically do. They can read in the way that works for them.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, another thing we're promoting here at the conference we have a couple handouts that are guidelines for teachers who are creating their own materials or buying ebooks, commercially available ebooks, so that they're purchasing and creating materials that also work for these students. So with just a few steps, they can create a document, for example, that is going to be more likely to be enjoyed and read by a wide variety of students, some of these with reading challenges, as well as when they're purchasing ebooks, if they just follow a simple checklist, they can pick ebooks that they know are going to work for these kids too. There's this misunderstanding out there, or this myth, that just because something is digital, it's automatically accessible to these students. And that's definitely not always the case. There's work that has to be done to get that message out, and we're advocating those guidelines as well today and here at the conference.
Awesome.
Awesome.
That's a very. I'm glad you're here. And do you guys have a booth?
We do. It's booth 1055.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We'd like, if you're listening to us live, you definitely need to stop by. So we have a lot of folks that listen live.
Great.
Here. But for our listeners that are out there around the country, I can't tell you enough how it has changed the way our teachers look at how they handle making sure students are getting every opportunity to read.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really big deal. And it sounds like that the other thing you're here to tell some folks about is to help teachers know how to differentiate between what's right and what's wrong, and how to use it to their best ability.
Right.
That's a hard one for teachers.
It is, yeah. And sometimes they don't know until they have a student with one of these challenges in their class, and they realize, oh, rats, this worksheet I created isn't going to work for the student. What do I do now? And so we're trying to get them to sort of have some of this knowledge earlier on, so that they don't find themselves in that embarrassing situation of, oh, this thing I'm trying to get them all to use isn't going to work, for these students, or my students with dyslexia aren't able to process that information very well because of the way it's laid out or the font that's used or whatever. So just getting some of that knowledge out there early on, I think, is really important. We love to see students embrace reading, and a lot of these kids come into school and spend the first few years of school literally hating reading and wanting to do almost anything but a reading assignment. They'd rather do chores than do a reading assignment because reading was so painful and difficult and frustrating.
Yeah.
And so it's wonderful, it's so exciting when they discover something like Bookshare where they can read in a way that works for them, and all of a sudden reading comes to life, and they suddenly discover our collection of 600,000 titles that they can access, and they go, wow, you know, I can read the same book that my friends are reading,
Yes.
and I can participate in the conversations about that book. And then all of a sudden they're reading at home, they're reading where their parents are having to tell them stop reading and go to bed, you know. And it's just such a wonderful thing to watch as someone providing a service to students. It's wonderful to watch that transformation.
Well, and I think it's also very important that, and really I think it's fantastic that you're also helping the creation side, because a lot of times, you know, I'm a writer, you know, and so I don't, in fact, really until you mentioned it, I really hadn't given it a second thought at all in terms of taking what I'm writing, taking my content and making sure that it's available in a format in addition to the other formats that we traditionally use, but also make sure that it's available in formats that can be applied to something like Bookshare, where, you know, to make sure that text is resizable and make sure that, you know, whatever the behind the scenes stuff that needs to take place, so that as I'm creating, it's accessible.
Absolutely. No, that's super valuable and you know, very important, and again, just going to contribute to the quality of students' educational experience. And frankly, when we start thinking about these variabilities and the way students learn, it ends up being good for everyone. If we're providing content in multiple formats, multiple ways that they can get access to the same information, it just means that everybody wins. Everybody gets content that works for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to mention that we recently launched a new initiative called Global Certified Accessible, and we're working with publishers, and they are providing ebooks to us to certify, to say, yes, this book has, you know, checks all the boxes and it does meet these requirements, so it will be usable for these students. And so we're working on building up a library of books that have the GCA certification, and so eventually the hope is that educators will just have to look for that certification as opposed to having to follow a checklist and say, does it do this? Does it do that?
Yes.
So they'll know that someone else already vetted it, and now they can be confident that they can purchase it and use it in their classroom. So that's something else we're excited about as well.
Well, and my thinking is that by extension, if I'm a publisher, right, or I mean, and I am an author, so if I'm interested in getting that label and I submit it, then you come back and you say, okay, well, you met these particular things, but these ones and not so much, then I can work with you, you can work with me in order to get those met so that I can get that label, so that I can get it out in the hands of teachers and students who are looking for that certification, that know, like you said, those folks have done the checklist, and I know that this particular piece of writing, in my case, meets all of these things.
Absolutely, and that's exactly the way we work. The process is very consultative. We're not out there trying to bash vendors or publishers or make them look bad or shame them into making some of these changes. We're really wanting to be proactive and positive and say, look, you know, we appreciate that you want to make your materials fit these criteria, and we will work with you. We'll go back and forth until it's right, until we're both comfortable with it, and then we're very happy to put our seal of approval on it, and the whole world will know, that you have taken the time and effort to make this work for the most number of students.
That's very, very cool.
There was a publisher who was testing some of this kind of work and built a book that had a lot of this functionality, and they offered it to a school district in general, not just to kids with some of these conditions. And it turned out that it was wildly popular by typical kids as well, because, again, the ability to hear it out loud is to follow along with the text. For someone who doesn't have some of these reading challenges, those are advantages. Those are helpful tools, so they actually could start to see the business case for it, that this isn't just a small market of students or teachers looking for materials for students. This could actually be something of interest broadly as well.
Yes.
So
That's really cool. I want to also ask, and I think this is correct, that any person can use Bookshare. Is that correct?
No, actually, no.
Well, but I mean, anyone that has say a neurologist or a family doctor, or has a learning disability or vision problems and blindness, or a physical disability, that is taken care of by a professional who says that yes, they need to use it.
Right.
Am I right there?
Right. So basically, the way the law reads, the Bookshare's qualifications are determined by copyright law.
Okay.
Which makes things a little confusing for educators because it's not education law, and in fact, doesn't use any of the same terminology that they're used to using in their sort of day-to-day world.
Right.
But the way the copyright exemption is written, that the law requires that a competent authority certify that an individual has some kind of barrier to reading printed text.
Okay.
And that could be a wide range of things. If you think about everything involved in the act of reading, somebody has to be able to, pick up the book, hold the book for a sustained period of time, turn the pages, see the print, right? Process the print. So there's a lot that goes into it. So if there's a barrier at any one of those parts of the activity of reading, that student probably qualifies. And we leave that decision up to the professionals working most closely with the students.
Yeah.
And we just require that they have documentation on file or a reason in the student's file as to why they qualify. We don't require that they send us any documentation. They just have to sign an agreement with us when they sign up for a Bookshare account that they're only going to add students who qualify. But again, we leave that decision up to them. And we're eager for as many students as possible to use it, obviously, because it is so beneficial. As I said, it's a huge collection of books. Almost every book that student needs for school is in there, and if it's not in there, we'll go get it and add it to the collection.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. It really is.
If our listeners want to get in touch with you guys, what's the best way to do it?
So bookshare.org is the website where they can find a lot of information, and I'd say that that's the best place to start. There's a number of resources on that website as far as how-to guides, and there's a very robust help center. Discussions, I think it's discussions.bookshare.org is a user forum, basically, they can always post questions there, and it's a very active group of people who love to answer other users' questions.
Yeah.
So lots of information on the website, and that's probably the best way to get in touch with us.
Awesome.
Cool. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you for sitting down
Thank
with
you
us.
for having me.
I always learn something.
You've been listening to a recorded conversation from EduTech Guys live coverage of FETC 2018. For more information about EduTech Guys, visit edutechguys.com. And thanks for listening.